Our poor MC Peter never imagined that his future father-in-law, in order to keep him away from his daughter, would go to such extremes, using his full power to force him into a blind date with the beast woman princess of the Orc Kingdom. The rule was simple: if Peter had any physical relationship with her, his engagement to the daughter would be automatically annulled. Seeing the bizarre appearance of the beast folk nobles, and especially a female orc with 8-pack abs, Peter secretly felt relieved, thinking there was no way someone from this bloodline would ever make his heart flutter. But the moment he laid eyes on the pig sister, he was utterly dumbfounded. The boy and girl truly loved each other, but the girl's father fiercely opposed their relationship. To make the boy give up, he declared that only the one who earned the title of the strongest warrior on the surface could marry his daughter. But in this world, which revered strength above all, no human had stood on the champion's podium of the martial tournament in the past 150 years. Even so, Peter fought countless battles and finally reached the final match. If he could defeat the Minotaur in front of him, he would achieve his dream and become the strongest warrior, earning the right to marry the one he loved. Realizing this, his blood surged with passion, and an unimaginable strength burst forth from within him. In the next second, his blade sliced through the air, cleanly severing one of the Minotaur's horns, sending the beast crashing to the ground beside the bottomless gate. Peter had won the duel and earned the title of the strongest warrior, but he had no idea he was about to pay a heavy price for it. Eager to share his joy with his girlfriend, he was suddenly interrupted by a female demon clan member named Mimi, who appeared to congratulate him and asked him for a small favor. Still riding high on his victory, Peter agreed without hesitation. At first, he thought he had misheard, but Mimi innocently explained that producing strong offspring with powerful beings was the top priority of every demon clan female. Even more shockingly, worried he might not have heard her clearly, she bluntly and openly asked him to exercise with her. Just as he was about to collapse from mental pressure, Mimi's older sister Lisa appeared. Seeing her mature and composed demeanor, Peter felt like he had found his savior and pleaded with her to educate her little sister properly. But to his horror, Lisa had come for the same reason: to compete for his seed. It turned out that now all the tribes wanted Peter to mate with their strongest females to produce powerful descendants, and the demon clan was especially determined to win. Looking at their wild, predatory expressions, Peter couldn't bear the thought of becoming a breeding machine. In a desperate move, he lied that there was an airplane in the sky, and when their attention scattered, he seized the moment to flee in utter embarrassment. He rushed to the church to share his joy with his beloved girlfriend, thinking he had finally secured her father's approval. The girl was so happy she had already picked out baby names, but Peter felt a bit speechless, as in their 2.5 years together, they had never gone beyond holding hands. His girlfriend was so innocent, she didn't even know how babies were made. This innocence made him both happy and tormented, all because of the values instilled by her father. Not wanting to shatter her beautiful worldview, he chose to silently endure everything on his own. That night, after returning home exhausted, he was just about to rest when he discovered that Mimi had snuck into his house. Without hesitation, he kicked her out, unable to understand the demon clan's mindset. When he returned to his spot, Lisa also suddenly popped out of nowhere and he had to kick her out again. The ruckus woke up the other tenants, who, upon seeing the scene, started accusing him of being a heartless playboy who abandoned 2 sisters. With no way to explain, he was forced to let them in. At first, he could resist temptation with strong willpower, but eventually, as expected, he lost control of himself. So here, we'll have to skip 2.5 minutes. By the time he woke up, it was already the next day. After a long, exhausting night, he was filled with deep regret. Just then, someone knocked on the door, and hearing his girlfriend's voice, his heart instantly froze. He had never imagined that because of his unmatched fighting ability and perfect genes, every tribe would send their most beautiful females to him to ensure the birth of the strongest offspring. But despite the overwhelming temptation from the demon sisters, Peter didn't feel a bit excited because he had already made a lifetime promise to the guild leader's daughter. He couldn't forgive himself for betraying the one he loved. In the beginning, he tried to resist with all his might, but as the other side used more underhanded tactics, he gradually slipped into the abyss. In the end, he made the mistake every man dreads. The next day, as tears of regret rolled down his face, his girlfriend unexpectedly came to the door. In a panic, he yanked up his pants and shoved the demon sisters into the wardrobe. After calming them down, he opened the door. His girlfriend was confused seeing him drenched in sweat, but he lied, saying he had just been out running for exercise. Hearing that, Luelia smiled warmly and praised him as a hard-working and self-disciplined young man, someone who remained humble and focused even after winning the championship. She had come to invite him to talk to her father and finalize their engagement. Peter was overjoyed because her father had promised to approve their marriage if he won the tournament. So, together, they went to see the guild president and asked for his blessing. But unexpectedly, the old man went back on his word and even drew his sword to kill the blonde-haired Peter right then and there. At that critical moment, Luelia stood in front of him, using strong words to sever ties with her father and force him to keep his promise. She declared that marrying Peter was her own wish. The guild president broke down, furious that the man he despised had stolen his daughter. To save his reputation, his aides quickly stepped in and announced that a grand celebration for the tournament victory and the engagement would be held that very night. Although the two could finally be together openly, the events of the previous night night haunted Peter's conscience. He silently vowed never to betray his heart again, but little did he know, Peter never expected that the demon sisters would suddenly take control and become so aggressive, and just as he began to panic, worried his secret would be exposed, he quickly explained that he already had a fiancée, but the two didn't care at all. Before he could finish his words, they grabbed him right away, but at that exact moment, Peter heard his girlfriend's approaching footsteps. In the nick of time, he shoved the demon sisters under the table and tried to act normal while chatting with his girlfriend. As expected from the strongest man on the surface, Peter remained calm even in this nerve-wracking situation. Of course, he couldn't stand up because his sword was still fully unsheathed, and if exposed, not only would his engagement be cancelled, but his father-in-law might literally chop him into pieces. Peter's brain raced to figure out how to handle it. Just then, the guild leader, his father-in-law, exploded in rage, ready to teach the blonde liar a lesson, but his daughter stopped him. The old man suddenly remembered the times his daughter promised to always stay by his side, and how she had recently threatened to sever their father-daughter bond for Peter. Tears welled up in his eyes, and all he could do was turn away and leave in anger. Peter narrowly escaped disaster, and Luelia, deeply moved, grabbed his hand. Just when Peter's inner beast was about to explode, his future father-in-law began drunkenly throwing a fit, forcing Luelia to go comfort him, leaving Peter alone again. The moment the obstacles were gone, the demon sisters intensified their assault. Peter firmly refused, saying he would never betray his fiancée again. But then the scene suddenly shifted. Peter was shown standing on the balcony, lost in deep thought about the meaning of life and the mysteries of the universe, unaware that a new danger was quietly approaching. Unexpectedly, Luelia discovered his fiancée, and the scene cut again. Peter couldn't believe what was happening. It turned out that his future father-in-law had secretly teamed up with the nobles and even informed them of human aesthetic standards. Once the demon sisters succeeded, they knowingly stepped away, leaving Peter alone with the pig sister. He had assumed that she too wanted his seed, but to his surprise, she was panting heavily, her face turning pale. Confused, Peter asked what was wrong, and the pig sister shyly said it was her first time being so close to a male. She then revealed that because she looked too human, she had always been bullied in the orc kingdom and felt deeply inferior. After watching Peter's heroic performance in the arena, she felt someone as hideous as herself didn't deserve him and ran away in tears. But after barely running 2.5 meters, she was blocked by 3 thugs who started harassing her and tried to touch her. Thankfully, Peter arrived just in time and swiftly defeated them, pulling off a perfect hero saves the beauty moment. Under Peter's kind words and charm, the pig sister slowly began to fall for him. He took her around the human town, letting her enjoy all kinds of wonderful experiences she had never known before. She felt truly happy for the first time, but Peter didn't realize that his every move was being secretly watched by his future father-in-law, and even the thugs were actors he had arranged, all to make the pig sister fall hopelessly in love with Peter. After all, no man could resist a beauty's affection. That night, during the banquet, Peter firmly rejected the arranged marriage, but the orcs insisted the two needed more time to bond and forced them to stay together. The pig sister couldn't help but blush. The guild leader promised that if nothing went wrong tonight, the engagement would be cancelled tomorrow. But Peter noticed the pig sister giving him a strange look. It turned out the old man had collaborated with the orc nobles again and spiked her red wine with happy water. As she started to lose control, Peter reminded her that he already had a fiancé, but she pounced on him, saying orcs practiced polygamy and she was fine with being just a concubine. Still, Peter resisted with all his strength. Luckily, she snapped out of it and burst into tears. Though Peter had tried to resist, under the bright lights and mounting pressure, he eventually lost control of himself. The next day, Peter realized he had fallen into his father-in-law's trap again. To protect his sanity, he told the pig sister that this political marriage was just using her and begged her not to lose herself for the sake of manipulation. He gave a heartfelt speech trying to convince her to keep everything secret. Later, the guild leader eagerly asked how her night with Peter had gone. The pig sister blushed and calmly said Peter hadn't touched her at all. The old man was in total disbelief that someone could resist such temptation. Just when Peter thought he was finally safe, the pig sister made a surprising request. Even though last night didn't go as planned, she was confident they would grow closer, and she wanted permission to stay by Peter's side. Both leaders felt pleased, unaware that the pig sister was secretly planning something no one could imagine. Later, when the two were alone, she confessed that because of her ugly appearance, she had always been treated badly and felt no loyalty to the orc kingdom. She didn't want them to benefit from Peter's superior genes either. Peter never imagined that he had accidentally awakened the dark side of the pig sister. Just as he was getting chills, she suddenly hugged him tightly. He never could have guessed that after becoming the world's strongest man, all the most beautiful women of every race would try to put horns on him. Shameless demon princess sisters, seductive elf princesses who used charm magic, and the seemingly innocent but secretly scheming big-breasted pig sister. They forced Peter into daily combat, threatening to expose his disloyalty if he didn't comply. With no way out, Peter had to sign a distribution agreement. Yet the pig sister kept pleading loyally to stay by his side, again and again, never giving up, her eyes full of devotion and secret schemes. Pig sister continued to plead to Peter again and again, never leaving his side, begging with such determination that Peter began to feel overwhelmed. Over and over, she pleaded with tearful eyes, refusing to give up until her tone suddenly shifted and she threatened Peter to hand over his seed. Furious, Peter questioned why she was doing this on his day off. At that moment, Luelia appeared and grew suspicious about their relationship. Peter quickly lied, saying they were simply doing combat training. To avoid being exposed, he had no choice but to drag her into the bathroom. Peter never expected Pig's sister to be so shameless, lacking even a hint of integrity or honor. With no way out, Peter reluctantly gave in and tried to clean up the mess just as he was about to continue his date, only to see the elf princess sitting right next to his girlfriend. Once again, Peter had to repeat his usual tricks, but sure enough, the demon sisters also burst out from hiding, proving they had never intended to follow the contract. As Peter struggled with all his might, somewhere else, Luelia sat drinking alone, and under the influence of alcohol, she recalled the time Peter once risked his life to save her from a monster's jaws, even falling off a cliff in the process. The first thing he did after regaining consciousness was worry about her safety. From that moment on, her love for Peter became unshakable, but the pure-hearted Luelia had no idea that Peter had been reduced to a breeding tool. When they parted ways, she asked Peter to go on a trip with her someday, just the two of them. Peter couldn't say no. Luelia didn't suspect a thing about today's chaos, but watching her walk away, Peter wanted to confess everything, yet an invisible force kept him silent. Tormented by guilt, Peter was alone, repenting, when Pig's sister suddenly walked in. But instead of forcing herself on him like the others, she gently comforted him, saying he could talk to her about anything troubling his heart. Touched by her kindness, Peter fell into her arms again. Then the other girls entered too, and a full-blown group brawl broke out once more. Afterward, Peter was mentally broken. Not even bothering to get dressed, he ran into the rain, sobbing uncontrollably as painful memories flashed through his mind. Finally, he ran away from home. As he sat on some steps, face buried in his hands, crying in the rain, a towering demon man appeared, handed him a towel to cover up, and said he was willing to listen. So Peter poured out his pain, confessing his irreversible mistakes and his longing to escape everything, though he couldn't forget the one he truly loved. The man shared his story too. He had wandered the world for 3 years searching for the goddess he loved. Peter's eyes lit up with admiration, amazed to find someone even more devoted than himself. Encouraged by this kindred spirit, Peter regained his confidence, but he never expected they were both in love with the same person. Before leaving, Peter asked who the woman was. "Yes," the man said, "I am the first queen of Augustan, the strongest warrior. I followed Master Issa Alpax to this place." Peter was stunned because the woman he referred to was one of Peter's many juicing machines. The man had trained under the world's strongest warrior, doing 10,000 sword swings each morning, wiping floors 15,000 times a day, applying elf body-enhancing spells and orc protein bombs. After 2 weeks, he built the perfect body. Finally, the day of the duel came. Facing the demon princess he'd never beaten before, he was filled with confidence, believing he would win this time. As the battle began, he unleashed his training, overpowering her with raw strength, but the princess looked like she still had the upper hand. Watching from the side, Peter noticed his movements becoming slower and suspected something. Sure enough, the demon princess suddenly started shaking her slimy slime rapidly, and the man's gaze was instantly locked in, his reaction lagging. Taking that chance, the demon princess easily finished the fight. Peter couldn't believe it. Wu Di had never lost because of skill, but because he was so obsessed with muscle training that he had never even touched a woman. He was still a full-blown virgin. When the man woke up, Peter gently told him about the loss and explained he couldn't win in his current condition. As Peter was thinking of a solution, the guild receptionist, Miss Mickey, visited. Seeing how much Mickey cared about the man's injuries, Peter suddenly got an idea. Why not get him a girlfriend to help fix this issue? He secretly told him that Mickey clearly liked him, always making him homemade lunches during training. But the man was fully devoted to the demon princess and said he could never betray his feelings. He enjoyed spending time with Mickey, but everything he'd done so far was for the princess, and he couldn't break that vow. As the two argued, Mickey overheard and cut in, boldly confessing, "I know you love Lisa, but I love you too." Hearing her sincere feelings, the man, who had never been in love, completely froze. Seeing this, Peter stepped away with a knowing smirk, letting nature take its course. That night, the man finally broke through that final line. The next morning, he had transformed completely. Feeling a rush of new power, Peter suggested he challenge the princess again, but the man declined. He said he had let go of the past and finally found true happiness. Love really does affect a man's sword speed. Peter had originally planned to use him to shake off the demon princess, but that plan was now completely ruined. The demon princess approached Peter, sincerely thanking him for helping her people. She said that after her transformation, she was sure she could become a top-tier warrior. Then she slowly moved closer and asked Peter, did he also want a fresh start? The demon princess warned Peter to consider the path to happiness, telling him that the innocent Luelia would never be able to satisfy him, especially with a daughter-obsessed father-in-law always getting in the way. They were destined to never find true happiness, but she, on the other hand, could completely devote herself to Peter, even make him the king of the demon clan. Leaving behind her tempting words, she turned and walked away, and Peter fell deep into thought. Just then, Luelia appeared before him, and his heart suddenly regained its resolve, but she brought bad news. A group of female female goblins had attacked a nearby village, capturing many men by mistake. As the strongest warrior, Peter couldn't ignore it and immediately set off to help, with the rest of the women following. Because goblins had no males of their own, they entered mating season periodically and violently raided villages to extract men. Upon hearing this, the guild leader instantly sent adventurers to fight the goblins. Since there were too many this time, Peter and Luelia split up to lead separate teams. At that moment, the village men were trapped in the church, powerless and terrified as the goblins broke down the doors. Just as the villagers fell into despair, Peter arrived and blocked the way. As the strongest man on the surface, he easily took down the goblins, and the Juice Squad women who followed him all proved to be combat experts. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been chosen to partner with him. Even the usually gentle Pig Sister showed surprising strength in battle. Under Peter's command, the frenzied goblins were all captured alive, but Sanji informed him that the higher-ups had ordered all goblins to be executed. Suddenly, Peter remembered the baby goblin he saved as a child, and he immediately stopped the execution. Just then, the elf and demon sisters snuck up behind him and dragged him into a room, forcing him to clean up again. But a knight rushed in with terrible news. Luelia's squad had been ambushed by goblins, and she had been taken alive. Hearing that the one he loved was in danger, Peter left the Juice Squad behind and rushed to her rescue. When he arrived, only one severely wounded female knight was still breathing. She told him that the elite goblins ahead were the queen's personal guards, and after learning Peter was the strongest man on the surface, they planned to capture him and offer him to the goblin queen, using Luelia's life to force him into submission. Helpless, Peter dropped his weapon and allowed the lead goblin to bind his hands. Luelia, upon waking and seeing this, shouted at him to ignore her and destroy the goblins. Hearing her call Peter's name, the goblin chief stared at him closely. They were both taken back to the cave. Peter reassured Luelia that he would get them out, but he was kicked aside and dragged before the queen. At this point, Peter couldn't help but hope the queen would be a beautiful woman. After all, the higher the goblins' rank, the more human they looked. He figured maybe sacrificing a bit of dignity wouldn't be too bad, but the moment he saw the queen, he froze. He never imagined that the goblin beauty who defied the queen to save him was actually the same little goblin he had adopted as a child. Back then, Peter and his sister had found the baby goblin and lived with it like family. But when humans began hunting goblins, Peter had been too weak to protect it and watched helplessly as it was taken away. He had thought it was long dead, but the goblin queen had saved it. Overwhelmed with guilt, Peter apologized for failing to protect him, amazed at how charming the goblin had become. Reaching out to confirm, Peter finally recognized the familiar reaction. It was truly his little Gobbo. He asked Gobbo to help him rescue Luelia, and Gobbo, thrilled by the reunion, agreed instantly. But as they hid from the goblin patrols, the queen's pheromones began to fill the air, and Gobbo suddenly lost control, begging Peter to help release him. Just as he was about to give in, Peter's harem team dropped in from the sky, interrupting everything. There was no time for jealousy because the goblin army had arrived to surround them. The harem decided to stay and hold them off so Peter and Gobbo could rescue Luelia. However, the goblins had predicted this and were already waiting ahead, guarding the path. The monster guarding the entrance was a fusion of countless goblins. Even Peter had to back off. Fortunately, a knight order arrived to help, wearing specially crafted armor that blocked the female goblin's seductive powers. After an intense battle, the goblin queen and her followers were all captured alive. The higher-ups quickly ordered them to be executed, but Peter didn't want another tragedy. He believed humans and goblins could coexist if the root cause of their frenzy was removed. Remembering what the goblin researcher once said, Peter came up with a solution and stopped the execution. He demonstrated using a goblin, explaining that certain nutrients in human milk could calm them. Just a small dose could bring them back to normal. Sanji ordered the knights to take responsibility and begin treatment. Soon, all the goblins had recovered. That night, the city threw a grand celebration to thank the knights. The heroine felt guilty for being a burden and left early, saying she needed rest. Peter, proud of himself for not betraying her this time, ended up drinking too much in celebration, and when he woke up the next morning, he realized he had made the same mistake again.